So hi, I'm Charlotte Murray. I'm the Director of Social Inclusion at Good Things Foundation. So when I started to look at the question that's up behind me, I immediately kind of in my mind sprang to the most innovative, radical way of thinking about this question. And I started to think about apps that I'd seen when I've been out and about that help to address social challenges. And one that came to mind was one called Ugly Mugs, which is used by sex workers to alert other sex workers to dangerous men. The other one that came to mind was an app called StreetLink. And StreetLink's available to everyone, and the idea behind this is that if you see a rough sleeper, you can flag that individual using the app, and that an appropriate agency will be able to then ensure that they get the support and help that they need, and that you will be updated and kept posted around that individual's progress. So both of those are absolutely fantastic, and they're great examples of how digital technology is helping to solve social challenges that are present in our society. But it doesn't describe every way that it isn't looking at digital in its widest sense. So it then started making me think about how is Good Things Foundation answering that question? What are we doing? How are we tackling this problem? And really it goes back to what's at the heart of our strategy, and that's about helping to improve lives through digital. I think previously we've probably been best known for our digital inclusion work, and we've always had a real importance placed on this concept of leaving no one behind. But a single issue charity we've absolutely never been. We've always understood that by helping people to develop basic digital skills, you are empowering them and enabling them to address much wider social challenges. And we've always been really, really passionate and continue to be about the link between social inclusion and digital inclusion. And we actually find it quite difficult to separate the two. But we have changed recently, and over the last sort of 4 to 5 years, we've been on a bit of an evolution, and we now use a phrase which is social inclusion powered by digital. We're still very much around and put a massive amount of importance on this concept of leaving no one behind, but our language has slightly changed. And I think the best way for me to try and explain what we mean by that statement is to give you a couple of examples of the work that we've been doing over the last 3 to 4 years. But I think before I do that, I want to make quite a bold statement, I suppose, to say, I'm really sorry, Helen, but to say that actually my personal opinion is that digital, and it's up on the screen there, in brackets, on its own, is not the solution to every social challenge. And I think the reason I want to say that now and say it at this point in my quick talk is because the two examples that I'm going to give you are digital solutions, digital interventions, but they absolutely could not have been delivered and executed or even conceived without the input from our fantastic online centres network and without the face-to-face interventions. And it's not just the training that those centres, some of which are here today, provide. It's the open door, it's the friendly face, it's the cup of tea, actually, that makes the biggest difference. So when I'm talking about the two interventions that I'm going to go on to mention, do not see them as kind of digital by default solutions, because they absolutely are not. So the first one that I want to talk about is English My Way. So it's already been mentioned. I kind of felt like Matthew was going to steal my thunder at one point, but I think it's all right. I think I can rein it back. So we listen to centres a lot, and I think the co-design session today hopefully helped to demonstrate that. And what centres were telling us about 4 years ago is that they were getting a lot of learners presenting at their centre who didn't have English as a first language. And actually they didn't even have pre-entry level ESOL skills. And furthermore, that when any resources that were available were very much treated in isolation to the basic digital skills that they may need. I think this is why I'm saying that Matthew nearly kind of stole my thunder. So what the centres also told us is that there was no curriculum for pre-entry level ESOL, which I found absolutely astonishing at the time, but there wasn't one. So we partnered with the British Council and the BBC, and we pulled together a 96-hour pre-entry level ESOL learning curriculum, and we were fortunate enough to get that funded by the Department of Communities and Local Government. And so that was our first venture into addressing a social challenge. But how did we power that by digital? We powered it by digital in 3 ways. So the first thing we did was to ensure that everything that we produced and all of that 96-hour learning curriculum was digitised. So we used video wherever possible, but we also made sure that all of that content was put online and that it was on an open and free website for learners and tutors to use in the UK, but also worldwide. The second thing that we did was that of that 96-hour learning curriculum, we ensured that 12 hours of it helped people to develop basic digital skills. And the reason we did that was to make sure that when someone left the programme, they not only had pre-entry level ESOL skills, but they also had basic digital skills, because we felt that those 2 things combined were a lot more powerful than separate. And the third thing that we're about to do is to launch a app for English My Way. And the reason that we want to launch the app is to enable more people to benefit from the programme, but also to ensure that people can learn on the go and at home, or actually teach on the go and at home, to have a bigger reach. So that's just one example of what we mean by social powered by digital. The next example that I want to give is the financial literacy programme that we're running in partnership with Toneby Hall and Sheffield University. So this is slightly different. We've taken a slightly different approach to what we're doing. But basically, we wanted to investigate if helping someone to complete a financial online transaction as part of a digital and financial capability or literacy course actually had an effect on the poverty premium. So again, Matthew was touching on this area. And it was quite an innovative programme. So it was a randomised control trial using a step wedge model, which I'm told is the first of its kind in a social context. And the reason we did the programme when we undertook the pilot was because, again, the centres but also the sector had been telling us that although there was brilliant financial capability and inclusion resources and training available out there, digital did not feature in those. So basic digital skills wasn't included as part of the package. But even despite the Lloyds Consumer Index telling us that by being online people can save just under £450 a year, the digital transaction was not woven into the curriculum or the teaching for financial literacy, which we just thought was crazy. So that's an example of two programs that we've run. But at Good Things Foundation, we never just do things for the sake of doing things. We do things to have an impact, and we do things to make sure that nobody's left behind. So in the case of English My Way, I went to a centre recently and I met a lady who said to me, English My Way's changed my life. Basically, it's allowed me for the first time to speak to my children's teachers and to understand how they're doing at school and any kind of behavioural issues. She also then went on to say not only had it done that, it had enabled her to take a bit of control back in her household, because for the first time she could understand what her children were saying to one another when they were talking in English. She didn't always like what they were saying, but she could understand it. And thirdly, she said to me that actually she was now able to understand what her children were doing on the internet and to keep them safe, but also to help them with their homework. So for her, it had been the biggest life change that could have been that she could have possibly imagined. On the financial literacy programme, I went to a centre and met a guy who had been made redundant about a year ago. And what he said to me was that doing that financial transaction was actually the biggest milestone in his year-long journey back to employment, because what it had given him, which nothing else had, was control. It had enabled him to save to switch 3 utility bills, which had meant that he'd save £50 a month. And he'd gone from feeling completely out of control with his finances, of just being reliant on whatever benefits he was able to receive, to actually having a sense of empowerment and self-efficacy around being in control of his life and his financial situation. So they're just two examples, and I think what it's made us realise at Good Things Foundation over the last kind of 3 or 4 years that we've been on this journey is that really going back to the question at the beginning, but also going back to the Ugly Mugs and Streets Link app. Digital doesn't have to be a sexy app. It doesn't have to be a radical intervention to have a significant impact. That actually, in a sector where digital is by no means saturated in everything that we do, there is significantly meaningful benefits that can be had from using digital in a number of different ways. And I actually feel that kind of combining digital and social inclusion presents one of the greatest opportunities, one of the greatest challenges, but one of the greatest opportunities in society today. And before I close, what I would say is two asks really. For the centres in the audience, please continue talking to us. You know, share your problems, share your challenges. We do listen and we do respond. And there's going to be an announcement later on by Campbell Robb. Please listen to that and do respond to us. To stakeholders and funders, when you're considering social inclusion interventions, please consider digital as one of the things that you have in your toolbox, and come and talk to us. We're really happy to help, and we're really happy to be part of the solution. Okay, thank you.